Great, thank you. Is everyone back in the room? I just want to say that, of course, this conference today is jointly with the Industrial Asset Management Council, IAMC. We've done 3 days together. They had their own day yesterday. We have a joint day today. And tomorrow, of course, they're welcome to join us as well. So we couldn't have done the event either without IAMC, so we're very grateful that the two organizations have come together. Now, I'd just like to introduce Paul McDowell, who's our co-chair for one of our committees and company secretary for the SIOR European chapter. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Well, welcome everybody. Good morning. Great to see everybody here, and welcome particularly all our friends from overseas. It's been great to be part of this organisation, and I hope you're all having a good time. It's my particular pleasure to welcome, first of all, Jay Olchenski of NAI Global. He's president of the world's largest managed network of commercial real estate service firms. And as we said before, without our gold sponsors and all our other sponsors, this event would not have happened. So we are truly, truly grateful to you, Jay. Jay brings more than 33 years of experience and industry knowledge to the firm, including a 15-year track record of success at CBRE, where he ran the firm's Washington, D.C. office. So without further ado, I welcome Jay.
Well, good morning. Either coming back when people take a bathroom break or right before the bar, I don't know if this is a good time or a bad time, but we're thrilled to be here in London. And I want to tell a couple stories about SIOR and our members and some of our different groups. In 1946, there was a young man who joined this organization 5 years after it was founded. And that gentleman's name was James. And then about 54 years later, there was a gentleman named Peter that joined this organization, SIOR. It was SIR, as most of you know back then. I'm 56, so to put that in perspective, I was 2 when Peter joined SIOR. And then even further, then the next generation, a gentleman by the name of William or Bill joined SIOR. But it doesn't only go that far. I happen to work for a gentleman who some of the older members in the room will know, Bernard Mannequin. Some of you will remember Bernie Mannequin. And I was a 30-year-old broker when I went to work for Bernard in Baltimore, Maryland. And it gets even better. 25 years ago, this gentleman, Richard Hollander, and I were evil competitors. He ran Cushman & Wakefield, I ran C.B. Richard Ellis in Washington, D.C., but we were also friendly competitors, and we were colleagues, and we actually shared a lot of information and grew together. And as all of you know, Richard is now in charge of this organization. But even one step further, and this is what SIOR is all about. I happen to work for a gentleman by the name of Stephen Siegel, who a lot of you from America know, but Mr. Siegel is the vice chairman of CBRE globally, and some would argue, besides Edward Gordon, maybe the best broker in the world. And Steve was actually my sponsor to become SIOR, and I think Steve has been a member now for 35 years himself, and still is active today. But, you know, you really got to look even a little further about SIOR. It's about relationships. And, you know, I have become very dear friends with Gabriel Silverstein, who is very involved with this organization in New York City, on a 3.5-hour car ride to an SIOR event that we were stuck in traffic going out on Long Island with the New York chapter, and got to know him. And he actually drew me closer into this organization. NAI Global has maybe the largest contingent of international members and European members. You know, I'm looking back at Andreas and at Robert and at Thomas, and we have a member, an SIR member, Richard Larry in Australia and New Zealand, and one Maru Keller Sarmiento in Buenos Aires, Argentina, all SIOR members. We have new candidates. Eric Howard, I don't see Eric, but Eric is a candidate from Switzerland right here with our group. SIOR is very important to NAI Global and to all of our offices. And what I really wanted to say is that a lot of this is to the credit of Peter Hansen. Peter said to me when I joined NAI Global, please become a member. Please get involved. And I think, as most of you know, Peter is a leader of this organization. He is a leader at NAI Global. So it is our pleasure to be a sponsor of all of the SIOR events. And most importantly, I know we're in London, Paul. Where's Paul? There's Paul. But everyone here has to come to New York, because I'm part of the planning with Gabriel and the New York chapter and Peter and Scott and others, and the 75th in New York City is going to be a blowout, and it's going to be fun. We have huge speakers lined up, huge events, and we welcome everyone. Thank you for having us in London. We're thrilled to be part of SIOR, and we look forward to doing many more things with you. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you very much, Jay. Just before I introduce our next guest, just drawing on something that Will Kintish said about networking and the importance of names. We had some years ago a somewhat controversial Prime Minister called Charles Haughey, but he was a great, great networker. He met my wife and her dog and was introduced. He met my wife and her dog 2 years later, and he turned to my wife, and he said, "How is Fleur?" being the dog's name. That's some great networking. She's never forgotten that. It's my great pleasure next to introduce Louise Brooke-Smith, who is going to be moderator for our next session. Louise has 30-odd years' experience as a chartered surveyor and town planner, both in the UK and overseas. She's CEO of Brooke-Smith Planning, a long-established and award-winning planning and development consultancy based in Birmingham. She's also the immediate past global president of RICS. She was the first woman to hold this role, and she championed diversity in all its forms. So please, my great pleasure, would you welcome Louise.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much. Thank you very much for that very kind introduction. I'm hoping that we can spend about an hour, we're running a little bit late, so it might be a little bit squeezed, about an hour reviewing some of the current trends in development in different parts of the world, hopefully. We have a fabulous panel to help address some of the key issues, and together we're going to highlight some of the more important schemes that are coming through, some of the trends in terms of style, governance and control, funding, and we're going to look at the current marketplace in terms of what's attractive and where are the greatest challenges that we're facing at the moment. Now, you've heard a bit about my background, and yes, I did have the honour of being the global RICS president, which basically meant that I was an ambassador for the land, property and construction sector. So I spent a considerable amount of my time on that global stage, sharing best practice and advocating professional standards across our industry. And it's a massive industry, as I think if you look through the attendance list of today's conference, you'll see just how far spread people have come to meet today. Now, mine, as I've said, was an honorary position, but in real life, I established a planning consultancy over 20 years ago, and together with a team in Birmingham in the UK, we advise developers and investors around the world. And as such, I've been involved in some absolutely fantastic schemes from Europe to China, from South Africa to Australia. Now, most if not all of the IMC and the SIOR members here today are working in the office and industrial investment, management, or development markets. But in so doing, we also clearly come across other forms of development, other forms of commercial development, retail, leisure, particularly in terms of our mixed-use schemes that are responding to market trends. I'm sure that the panel discussions will pick up on some of the housing and commercial trends currently experienced on the international stage. But I'm going to just set the scene, hopefully, by picking up some of the key headlines with regard to office and industrial development. Before I do that, you'll have noticed on your chairs a little poll. And I would be incredibly naive and probably foolish if I didn't acknowledge what's happening today in the UK. The vote to leave or remain in the EU has been incredibly emotional in recent months. For those here today from beyond the EU, my apologies, but it really has taken over every aspect of our working lives. Very few issues have been as bitterly fought over in recent years. Not surprisingly, the facts and the impact of whether we stay or whether we go have been interpreted in many ways, and not always with clarity. What is clear is the impact on land, property and construction sectors. It's been significant. Savills and a plethora of other agents have reported that both residential and commercial investment markets and development activity has been subdued in the run-up to the referendum. It's been echoed, this view has been echoed by a number of professional bodies. The RICS said this week that the referendum brings a degree of uncertainty which has clearly negatively affected some elements of the market. Part of this is due to the fact that no reliable historical data on the impact of a Brexit-like situation on commercial property market exists. There is no data that we can look at. Norway, fantastic. Anybody here from Norway? Anybody working in Norway at the moment? Okay. Norway has gone through this, but it's not really a direct comparison. The Norwegian economy simply isn't comparable to the UK's, which, as we've all been told in recent months, is the fifth biggest economy in the world. So, we're in a state of limbo as we sit today. It might be a bit different over the next few weeks. James Roberts, the chief economist at Knight Frank, has said that some tenants really have been very open about this. They want to see the results of the referendum before signing leases. And investors are temporarily moving to the sidelines until the result is known. KPMG undertook a poll of 25 global real estate investors. They picked investors with assets under $400 billion. That found that 75% felt that a Brexit would result in less inward investment into the UK property company, the property world. And this has been reflected by a number of other leading advisors, not just based in the UK, but worldwide. Now, the result of the referendum will be known at some stage tomorrow morning. But whatever the result and whatever the story, life will go on. So, a few headlines in terms of office space. Just over 37 billion euros was invested in European commercial property in the first quarter of this year. And that sounds really impressive, sounds fantastic, but it's a nearly 37% decrease on the same period last year. There is an impact. Why is it? Well, the impact is the referendum, but there's also a general slowing down of activity, particularly in France and Germany. That said, prime office yields remain stable, which perhaps indicates that there is still value in the market. I hope there's value in the market. And developers are just being a little bit more choosy in what assets they're buying and what development is actually being built out. Surveys from international banks suggest that there is strong employment growth expected in the remainder of this year, particularly in the UK. That, again, is underpinning confidence in the office market. So it's not all doom and gloom. In the UK, there is considerable interest in the regions in terms of office investment and development. It's not that London isn't still popular, but developers and investors are realising that the UK does not stop at London. Other centres offer good returns. And increasing funds are going out to the regions, particularly in the UK. I'm slightly biased because I come from Birmingham and I will always fly the flag for that part of the world, fantastic part of the world to invest in. But I'm very biased. That's the office market. What about the industrial market? What's it doing? Well, generally, it's a healthy picture in the UK, but again, the EU referendum is having its impact on the rate of investment and hence the extent of activity. Total industrial take-up at the moment is about 11% down on last year, and we think that's just simply a reflection of the referendum. £5.6 billion of industrial assets changed hands in 2015. Slightly down on the previous year. There was about £7 billion worth of asset involvement, interest. A little slower there, but not drastic. The GDP in the UK is about 2.2%, 2.1%, so it's okay. About 11 million square feet of industrial space is under construction as of the last figures issued, as far as I've picked up, in February, so a little bit out of date. As of February, stuff is coming out of the ground. Good news. I mentioned London a minute ago, and given the location of this conference, I think it is worth perhaps just a couple more words. It's at the heart of the strongest G7 economies, and they say that if London sneezes, the rest of the country catches a cold. I'm afraid it's true. London is up there in its own right on a pedestal. 73% of investment in London in 2014, a little bit out of date, was from overseas. That's the trend. And the liquidity of the London market ensures that there are always opportunities to invest. And that popularity is, in a way, self-fulfilling, with investment encouraging investment. The market here is diverse. It's the most visited city in the world, I'm told. 2014 figures suggested 18, nearly 19 million visitors spending over £12 billion while they're here. Lovely. It's one of the most accessible markets, plenty of opportunities, easily accessed information, and a lot of very good and well-respected advisors. Political and economic stability in London and the 10 core centres around the UK is growing. You may be aware we've just had mayoral elections in London, and that has now taken away the uncertainty in this part of the world, so which is a good thing. Property rent is predictable and relatively certain. Housing, the housing supply is at an all-time low, which is a major social issue in the UK and across Europe, to be honest. But it does mean that there is an amazingly strong demand. Government is pushing home ownership, but there's a general acceptance that mixed tenure and the private rented sector, PRS, will grow and result in rising rental yields. So a very quick and very brief snapshot, and I could talk all morning, and that's not what you've come to hear. You've come to hear a debate with our panellists, and that's what we're going to turn to now. We've got a fabulous panel of experts who are going to follow through on some of the themes that I've raised and share some of their expertise and insight. So, as I'm introducing them, they're coming to the stage. I think the easiest thing is for me to give you a little bit of brief overview. You've got some in your packs and in some of the publicity that's been issued to date. But first to the stage is Joseph Ghazal. Where's Joseph? There you are. Please come and join me on the stage, and feel free to take a seat. Joseph is Prologis Chief Investment Officer for Europe. He has an MBA and a master's degree from Paris, and his background is actually in civil engineering. Joseph has overall responsibility for all capital deployments spanning land development, that's project management, acquisitions, dispositions, and fund contributions for the company across Europe. He's a member of the European Management Executive Committee, more than, I can't count the number of years of experience in logistics, real estate development with Prologis. Prior to his current role, Joseph was regional head for Northern Europe, with overall responsibility for Prologis' operations in Scandinavia, Benelux, Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. He had senior vice president's positions, senior vice president for the Middle East, where again his responsibility was land acquisitions and built-to-suit development and management of state-of-the-art logistic parks. He really is, if you go through his CV or you Google Joseph, he really is Mr. Europe. So with experience in development, planning, site selection, design and construction management. So hopefully he will give a very good view, putting you on the spot now, Joseph, of the position here in Europe. Next to the stage, I'm going to invite Robert Dobryski, and I've had to practice because I'm not very good on surnames. So Robert, please do come join the stage. Robert is the Chief Executive Officer for Panasonic Europe. Robert oversees the company's operations in Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Germany and Romania. He opened Panasonic's Central and East European operation in 2005, and under his management, Panasonic Europe has become the market leader in the Polish market with a high brand recognition across the SEE region. During his years in post, Robert oversaw 2.8 million square metres of warehouse space out of an existing stock of 10 million square metres. So, you know, he knows his stuff in terms of, in terms of warehouse space. Currently, the portfolio managed by the company in Europe is 3.7 million square metres, with offices now in Poland, the UK, Czech Republic, Luxembourg, Germany and Romania. So again, another really established and experienced practitioner from Europe. My last panellist is Sir Stuart Lipton. So Stuart, feel free to come and join us on the stage, and as you do say, I'll explain that Sir Stuart has been a distinguished property developer in London since the late 1960s. A founder of Stanhope plc and various other very well-respected property companies. He's been responsible for more than 20 million square feet of development in more than 40 projects, including Broadgate and the Treasury Building in Whitehall, and his advice is frequently sought by ministers here in the UK and overseas. Current developments of significance include the 2 million square foot 22 Bishopsgate Tower in London, and the Silvertown scheme, a 62-acre mixed-use, 7 million square foot project in East London. And I'm hoping that Sir Stuart will elaborate more about those schemes during the discussion. Stuart was the founding chairman of CABE. Anybody in the UK will recognise that as being the Commission for Architecture and the Built Environment. It was a UK government initiative. He is a member of the Royal Fine Arts Commission and has been a board member of many arts organisations, including the National Theatre, the Royal Opera House, and he's a chairman of the City Finance Commission and a member of the London Finance Commission from 2012. So there are panellists, and I'm sure you'll agree that they have a significant wealth of experience under their respective belts. So I'm hoping that we can touch on those market trends and some of the key issues. I'm now going to move over and join the panellists and start by asking a few general questions, and then hopefully we'll get into some detail. And I'm hoping, if time allows, that we can have some questions from the floor as well. Now, we've all got mic'd up, so I'm hoping that you can hear me okay? That's brilliant. Okay. So, Joseph, I'm going to actually come to you first. Could you tell us and just share with you your view of what is successful development?
Very good question, Louise, and thank you for putting me on the spot right away. I mean, there's a lot of things that I think, in my mind, make up a successful development. And, you know, if I want to summarize probably what are, you know, the 2-3 key things that make up a successful development. One is probably a development that is sustainable over time. Second is a development where the ultimate end user is happy, or it's a development that's adequately designed for the end user in mind, the customers at the end. And thirdly, I mean, let's not forget the developer here, is where the developer is also properly rewarded with the development risks that he is taking. So these are probably the 3 things that come to mind.
And you started with sustainability, which is...
Yes,
okay.
Yes. Like, we're not developing for 5 years or 10 years. We're hopefully developing for much longer than that. And the designs and the construction need to meet a minimum design criteria in our minds in order to sustain the passing of time.
We might come back to the sustainability and green credentials issues later, but Robert, what's your first reaction to that sort of question? What's successful development in your eyes?
Yeah, I think successful development is the development which at the end of the day everybody has to be happy with. I mean, everybody involved. That's a kind of a measure. So obviously the client, the end user, it's hard to disagree, has to be kind of happy with it. The contractor, the service providers, the landowner, the developer, the end investor, also equity investor, development equity investor also has to be happy. If everybody's happy, then I think that means that probably it was a successful development.
That sounds like a panacea.
Yeah, but it's possible too.
Is it possible?
It is possible. This is what we should be trying to achieve, because it means that there might be another one.
Excellent. So Stuart.
Well, I think to talk about successful development, you need to go back a moment. So we're in a pretty antiquated world. We build buildings the same way as we did 100 years ago. Our technology is pretty well out of date compared with other industries. Our costs are always increasing, and our product in real terms doesn't change very much. Compare that for a moment to, let's say, Airbnb, whether you like it or not, all sorts of things. Compare it to WeWork, compare it to the home is workspace, the workspace is home, the coffee shop is the office. So what are we? I think the industry generally talks about the specification of buildings as being the desire line and, of course, the location. But for me, we need a big shift. Our business is about producing space for people to be successful, for people to enjoy, for people to feel relaxed and be productive, and for profit. And for some reason, when you look around, people don't talk about profit. It's a sort of embarrassment. And as for people, well, they're disregarded. So in the UK, we've had a building standard called BREEAM, which was always about looking after the building. In the US, you've had LEED, also looking after the building. So now there's something called WELL, which is looking after people. So for me, successful development is looking after people, making them productive, efficient, and dare I say it, even have fun.
Excellent. Oh, that's three very different answers. And I'm sure if you asked yourself in your own view, in your own world, you know, what do you class as being successful? Is it money driven? Is it people driven? Is it the green credentials driven? It was an opener to be able to tease out some of the themes that I think we'll hopefully pick up in a moment. I am, however, going to move into the market because we've got a lot of people here who are, you know, heavily involved in how the market performs. We know the impact. Forget the EU referendum for a moment, but the impact of the world recession has been significant. Robert, how has your company ridden out the storm?
Yeah, it's a good question to answer in like a few sentences. Obviously, it was a complex process.
Of course.
But clearly, what we were trying to do is to be kind of staying very close to our customers. I mean, tenants, users of the buildings, and that was the key element of our strategy to kind of go through the slowdown. When the slowdown showed up, obviously, we were trying to keep our buildings leased, and we were doing it by being really customer friendly. The return expectation was obviously much higher than before the slowdown, but we were not emotional about the return expectations. We were trying to be close to the customers, trying to be close to users which were keeping our buildings full. And when the building is full, probably there's much less that could happen to you as a platform than when you have struggling with vacancy or with overexposure somewhere. So that was our way to go through it. And our clients obviously were shortening, were downsizing, and we were staying close, trying to be flexible, offering them flexible deals, trying to accommodate their needs, which we think, and we see it right now, it's paying off right now, where they are coming back to us and saying, well, you were helping us at the time when it was a bit tougher time, and now we can trust you to go ahead because there'll be another slowdown in the future. So we want to be with somebody who would understand us when we will be locked into 10-year lease in the future, and we couldn't afford it. We would have to have obviously a structure which would allow us to survive. And I mean, lease is a lease, you have to respect it, but there are ways to kind of make it more kind of attractive. Okay. Defers certain kind of liabilities to make it work. So that was our way.
So it's trust and really homing into what your clients,
staying
occupiers want
even
to be
closer than before to the customer.
Okay. Joseph, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, if we're all here today, it means that we've ridden the storm kind of successfully. And what I might add is that what we've learned actually from the storm, which is now feels like a long time ago, but there is a learning from it, is that our sector, industrial sector in general, has been resilient. You know, people, whatever happens, will still have to consume, to eat, to buy clothes, whatever happens. And this is, in general, our sector being relatively young in Europe, has been a positive to our sectors. I always give this example of when the music stopped back in 2008, we had exactly 152 buildings under construction, nearly 3 million square meters. And they all got leased within 2 years. And this is because of our platform back then. We had 12 million square meters. Today we're 16 and a half customer relationships that we had. And because the sector is resilient as well. So that's for sure. And from there on, I mean, we strategically allocated capital to Europe, where we've ridden kind of the curve up again, where we acquired a lot of assets and we developed a lot of assets, and we continue to do so.
So Stuart, you and I both know that a lot of developers who had been around for some time, and some who entered the market 10, 15 years ago, didn't weather the storm very well, and some have, do not exist anymore. Those that have come through and are still trading and trading quite well, what is it about them what's the spark? Does it reflect the same comments that Joseph and Robert, or is there something else from a developer's point of view from the UK?
We've all got to be customer-driven, people-driven, profit-driven. But for me, the interesting part of the product, if I can call it that, because I think we should stop calling it property and call it product, so it's like anything else. We should stop isolating property as though it's something special in the corner. The only thing special about it is it has long-term income streams. And we need to start focusing more on how society is moving. So, a question for the audience. What did you do when you woke up this morning?
Sing.
Sing.
Good, sing. Excellent.
Looked at the latest polls results.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so when I ask this question, it's a general question, so if I'm asking it to a younger audience, they're thinking, am I asking, did they have sex with their partner? Or what did they do?
They looked at their iPhone.
Absolutely right. So the point I'm making is that the world has changed. That toy in your pocket is technology, and everybody is technology. The growth stocks have been technology, but we haven't really addressed the new world of technology. So technology is social, and social, if you go into a building, is about people working together collaboratively in groups, active working. The best examples are in Australia, where all the banks work in a collaborative way. And technology is about the building being the servant. You buy a movie ticket, cinema ticket, you book it online, and you arrive with your credit card at the movie house, put it in, and out comes the ticket. You go into an office building, and you wait online. Who's giving the service to who? So my points would be technology is changing. Service has got huge steps to make. It's primitive. And culture of organizations and people are the things which are going to change the way we work together with the amenities that back that up.
That's a very good link to the next area, which is with that in mind and with the idea of future cities and future successful cities where development achieves everything, Robert, that you said right at the beginning, is successful for everybody concerned. So that's the developer, the investor, but primarily the user, the community. Future cities and successful future cities may not be the cities that we see today. There will be a different breed of cities that address everything in terms of new technology that Sir Stuart has just mentioned. I'm just going to home in on Europe with that as the context. Do you think Europe's got it? Do you think Europe is going to continue to be a centre of excellence? Are there cities in Europe that can achieve and address the need, certainly from a high-tech point of view, from a use of new technology point of view, that will affect your business?
Well, I generally think that New Europe might be a bit faster adjusting to the technology than the older Europe because it's less established and can skip the few phases of development overnight. But obviously I'm not specialist on technology side, I'm not the specialist on the
Where do you see the new Europe coming from?
Obviously the Central European countries, which they don't have a lot of history, kind of a capitalistic history, and it's easier to change things there.
Okay.
In Western Europe, it's much harder to change things, which is actually today probably a good thing.
That's interesting. Joseph?
But definitely, I mean, just look at in our sectors in particular, just look at e-commerce and what is it doing to our business and to the supply chain of our customers, and how is it, because it's following the consumption trends of the customers. And when you start talking about last mile delivery, it's something that we haven't even talked about 10 years ago. Reverse logistics, where do you need to put all these buildings? How far from the cities? How is the customers who are using these platforms, what's their consumption habits? And all this in reverse has an effect on our business and how we design buildings, not just how we design them, where we put them, where our customer want them to be, how to be most efficient. And then I come back to this sustainability. It's not just about green labels or BREEAM or LEED. It's sustainability in terms of location, design, efficiency that can not serve one customer but multiple customers, not just one investor but multiple investors over time. So it is affecting us, and I think it is, it's getting at a pace that is probably faster than a lot of us think in this room, even in Western Europe.
So we've got to embrace new technology and move with it. I speak a lot about smart cities, and instead of smart cities is a very difficult concept to get through. So I tend to call them just clever cities or clever regions that really have got their act together, have seen some of the opportunities and are embracing them now, which I think reflects what you were talking about earlier, about certainly from the way that the speed that new technology is influencing the property world.
But for me, great cities are civic cities.
Okay.
So if we look at the successes and the failures of the real estate world, generally, most countries have shopping which is failing. The UK has internet shopping of about 25% of its demand, and there's constant clamour of why are these centres failing. So they fail typically because in a civic city, what I describe as a university town, a cathedral town, or a market town, they have the town square and the village green, all the kind of amenities which add character and life and interest. And typically in those cities, you can do the 2 Ps. Everybody know about the 2 Ps in a city? Okay, forgive the vulgarity. A P and a park. And if you can't pee and park in a city, you're not going to go there. It's really basic stuff.
Okay.
So in the UK, people are constantly complaining about the demise of the high street of the city. They forget the basics, and historic cities tend to have strange layouts. They're sort of combinations of, in the UK, medieval plans and more modern plans. But the basic ingredients of a city are surely the requirement. The other point is that cities throughout the world are urbanizing. Whether you look at Paris, London, New York, the tertiary developments are gone. Nobody wants them anymore. People want to be in campuses, in clusters. They want to be with their competitors, and they want a variety of activity. So I think we are going to see significant changes in cities. In the UK, for instance, we have a number of cities who are fighting for position. Manchester competes with Birmingham, Birmingham competes with Leeds, Newcastle, Liverpool, and they aren't all going to be winners. And the government just likes a free-for-all. You just go and fight it out, boys.
But we know where's best, really, don't we? I've mentioned. But yeah,
Not
you're
bad.
absolutely right.
So the second component would be infrastructure. Which cities are going to have the right infrastructure? Because infrastructure of success is the prerequisite for development.
Excellent. I'm going to move this on. Hopefully some of the themes will come through in any event. I'm going to now just look at ease of doing business. A lot of people here with us are, looking at some of the constraints. I call it governance, other people call it red tape, but it's really the ease of doing business. I'm going to ask the panellists, perhaps again start with Robert. In terms of that ease of doing business, where, in your experience, in your regional world, where's the easiest place to do business at the moment? Where's there less red tape and a lot more sort of enthusiasm from a government point of view, from regulations, permits point of view?
Yeah. Obviously, I can comment from the countries we are
Of course.
active. Obviously, we are in Germany, Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Romania. So comparing all these places, I would kind of rank probably Poland as number 1, Germany as number 2, number 3, Slovakia, number 4, Czech, and number 5, Romania. Poland is obviously the most efficient place from our standpoint to roll out our development program. I was kind of a bit skeptical about Germany, that it might be a bit bureaucratic, but it's very predictable. It's very kind of straight, and it's relatively easy to do what we do, meaning developing buildings. And obviously there's some limitations, restrictions, but everything is predictable. In Czech Republic, it's a bit complicated on the planning side, on the permitting side. So it's not always, it's locally driven sometimes, especially when you come with a large customer which requires a lot of infrastructure, then it's becoming a bit tougher. It's doable, but it's tougher. It's, and Romania is absolutely a new place in European Union. It is getting better, but you have to watch it carefully. You have to be kind of very close to the process. In our opinion, we can't roll big volumes there. We need to be kind of thoughtful and kind of do it step by step. Where in Germany, I can close the eyes and go.
So a lot of that comes down to established economies as well, isn't it? And Romania has changed relatively recently.
Correct.
We were talking earlier, I'd just come back from speaking in Romania about planning and about placemaking and future cities. And the impression I got was that Romania it's really, it could go places, but it's quite young.
It's quite young. It's a very motivated country. They want to change it,
yes.
Which brings opportunities, obviously, because if it's going to change, the liquidity would show up. There'll be a kind of a value to be created. But clearly, right now, it's a bit behind. So, but the people are very motivated to change it.
Yes.
They are very motivated.
There's enthusiasm.
Enthusiasm, correct.
Joseph, from your point of view, looking
Yeah.
wider across Europe,
I don't know if I want to rank them, actually. I would say everywhere it's easy if you know how it goes. I mean, in the UK, we know sometimes that we need 5 years to bring a site out of the planning situation. And, we know at day one that it's going to take that, and there's a process, and this is how it goes. I would agree Poland is the easiest, because Poland, in our mind, is still a young market with very few regulation, although lately they're starting to introduce some planning and land regulation, which we think is going in the right direction. But everywhere, if we have the team on the ground who knows how it goes,
it's
then
knowing the system.
Then then we go with it. Now I can talk about efficiencies. Where is it efficient? Where is it less efficient? And by efficiency, we mean maybe quick. Germany is quick. We know in 2 months we can get a building permit. Now it might be a bit difficult on the land side, depending on the customers and where you're going. Of course, in the middle of nowhere, it's easier to get land than more infill locations where maybe you need to look at brownfield rather than greenfield development. But with the teams on the ground and the right connection, that sounds dodgy sometimes in real estate, but it's connection, people who know what they're doing and that are embedded in the system.
As long as they're professional and ethical about it,
yes,
it's knowledge and getting the right advice in the right location is absolutely critical.
Absolutely.
So if I want to build a building in anywhere apart from the City of London, which is 1 square mile, it's complete bet. In the City of London, I can go in with a tenant and say, we want to start in 12 months' time, 9 months' time, and they will say yes. Anywhere else, it could be 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. There is no time scale. And every 6 months, the government changes the zoning or planning system, and it never gets any better. So I talk about peeing before. Our governments need nappies, because the reason for all this is they are frightened of offending the voter. And this has got out of control here. So if you want a house here, your sort of typical affordability age for private housing is 36. If you talk to people under 30, 50% of their income is going on housing. And government is completely carefree about this. It's, to them, not a problem. Interestingly, however, at this current Brexit debate, one of the issues of Brexit is that we have too many immigrants taking too many homes. Didn't occur to them that if they provided more homes, that might not be a problem. So we are schizophrenic.
And the more changes there are to any system, people will realise the more wrapped up in red tape, certainly in the UK, we have become. And my whole life has been dealt with the planning system over the last 30 years, and it's just been increasingly more frustrating. And we're advisors on the system, so people who are actually trying to get the system to work for them and get development out of the ground, not surprising that they are very frustrated here in the UK. I could talk for planning all day. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to move on.
One little funny incident.
Go on.
I built a new house 4 years ago, an eco house, supposedly. Not the very highest level, but pretty high level. So to get a permission is indeterminate length. But part of the kit here as sustainability is a point system. So your insulation has points, your heating systems has points. But part of the system is if you have a bird box, you get a point. If you have a clothesline, you get a point. If you have a compost heat, you get a point. So our system has no sense whatsoever.
Well, moving on from those very green credentials, I am going to talk about sustainability, or ask some comments on sustainability, but I'm going to look at sustainability and inclusion and diversity. Joseph, let me ask you, in terms of sustainability or green credentials, I know we've touched on it briefly. I think you said it right at the very beginning when you said your successful development. In your view, it carries weight. It carries significant weight, perhaps from the investment funds who are having ethical hearts over this.
Well, I mean, there are two things, right? Developments and then the operating platform. How do you deal with this? And some people call it green credentials. I call it common sense. What are we building and what are we building for? And are we building for the here and now, or are we building for the future? And who knows what the future will bring, but at least we can start thinking about it, and others will carry on thinking about it as well. So all of our new developments today have some common sense, future-proof, hopefully, credentials in them, in the design aspect, installation aspect, whether it's points or something else. And that leads to some certification mechanism, whether it's BREEAM or others. So all of our new developments have green certificate to start with at various levels. And we've been pushed more and more, actually, by some of our customers. And we've even now designing carbon neutral warehouse in Germany, where we never thought that we would do that. We did one in the UK 7-8 years ago already. UK has always been a leader in Europe in general in everything sustainable. I mean, we've started seeing signs on all of our warehouses with the green that you see on the fridges and the white goods that we all buy. And coming on to the funds, I mean, this is a very important issue. We're seeing it with our investors. There is the GRESB scale or the GRESB mechanism that kind of rate funds. All of our funds in Europe are part of that. And all of our investors want to be part of that. And there is an ongoing program because not everything we have in our portfolio is something that we've developed. Sometimes we buy older buildings. So we need to upgrade everything, whether it's lighting, LED lighting today, insulation upgraded in order for the warehouses to be a little bit more efficient. And we follow that program and we upgrade.
So basically sustainability is, it's moved on from being the buzzword to being just common sense and incorporated and embedded in what we do.
It was a buzzword prior to the crisis.
Yeah.
During the crisis, some of the customers and some of, even the investors put this between brackets, unfortunately, but everybody knows that if they don't jump on that wagon, I mean, in 10 years' time, whether they are, developers or investors, they will be vanished.
Thanks. So I'm just going to lead into another buzzword or buzz phrase, which is inclusivity and diversity in our industry. Given the nature of the audience, I think it was just an opportunity to be able to raise this. Our sector, the land, property, construction sector, and all the facets that go with it, has a persona. And I'm going to possibly offend some of the audience by calling it male, pale and stale, which is a phrase commonly used. Not surprisingly, I want to take the opportunity just to ask, from your different arenas, how are you addressing that? How are you addressing and embracing diversity and inclusivity in what you do and how you do it? Robert, perhaps, what do you think?
Yeah, it's a pretty tough question. In our organization, we haven't had that as an issue identified. So it's hard to respond for me to that question.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. Joseph, have you? I mean, I've done quite a lot of work with Prologis over the last couple of years because they've got a big drive on diversity and inclusivity because there's business sense in it.
Yeah, I mean, and our sector is a tough one. I mean, look at the audience.
Exactly.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Nothing wrong with them, but it's. And we've seen it. I mean, at Prologis, 50% of our people are maybe female, but at the top end, in the leadership positions, this percentage goes down to 10%.
Yes.
And back in 2014, that we've launched what we call the breakthrough, which is to bring awareness or more awareness to that gender diversity and bring equal chances to everybody. It started as a female awareness, and then it's more ending up as, everybody should have equal chances. And
it's not a gender thing.
Right, and it's not just a PowerPoint presentation or a training that you do. It's really giving chances to everybody to have access to anybody top there. So, we did lunches, casual lunches with, everybody from the back end of the organization, if I might say, so that people can see that they can if they want, and encourage people to speak up on what they would really like to do, where they would like to go, what is their aspirations, so that we try to bring anybody who would like that, and female representatives who would have those kind of aspirations to come forward and talk about it. So,
Thank you, thanks. I'm going to now move into deals and super deals. I'm going to ask Stuart, very straightforward question. What deal or development, in your case, has been your proudest moment?
I did a project out at Heathrow, which was on a 400-acre site, previously used as a refuse or garbage dump. That was very interesting.
You can elaborate a little more.
Okay, so we turned it into probably the best business park of the time in Europe. It won all the prizes, and we did so by moving around the components. So we excavated the refuse from one part of the site, made a small hill out of it, created a golf course around it with some difficulties from the natural contours of the land. We created the new development part in a bowl, so that had its own environment. And we burnt the methane gas. Today we'd use the methane gas. That was quite a challenge. We were assisted by 1 million worms. They were good friends. Anybody use worms? They're very good people to help in regeneration. And some stuff called sludge cake. Anybody know about sludge cake?
Yes.
It's something to do with human waste. I'll give you a clue. But it was a very creative project. It looks good. It's very green now.
So that's the one that stands in your mind as opposed to the broad gates and the...
That was sheer... It was a very difficult project.
Okay.
It involved stopping the refuse leaching out onto the... i.e. refuse produces chemical. How do you get rid of the chemical? It required all sorts of approvals. So the UK requires you to have what we called the hamburger test. You take a handful of ground fill, put it in a hamburger and eat it. Will that soil be okay? So the standards are pretty demanding. So we passed the hamburger test.
I'm going... Okay, beat the hamburger test, Robert. What scheme, what development have you done recently that, not necessarily recently, but what stands in your mind as you're really proud of?
Yeah, I mean, we have been awarded, I think it was almost 2 years ago, project, 3 projects at the same time from Amazon. 2 in Poland, 1 in Czech Republic. We're allowed to have 7 days to quote. We're allowed to have 4 weeks to process the documentation, and then 12 weeks after we had to start 3 buildings at the same time in 2 countries.
Cool.
Figuring on the way, the land, figuring all the infrastructure, contractors, service providers, everybody. And we have successfully delivered all of them. So
sounds like high pressure.
Yes, and it's with e-commerce today, pressure is one thing, time pressure is the second. The third thing is kind of a constant change. So even during the development process, there is constant change. And very tight margins too. No so there is no room for error, really.
Thank you. Joseph?
So it's not this year, it's all
Could
time.
be, what stands in your mind? What's been successful?
If we're talking specifically about development, I would mention a development that we did back in 2009. So in the, picture yourself in the middle of the crisis, recession, clamped down mode, nobody's developing anything, and we had a requirement for a 50,000 square meter warehouse from LG in the Netherlands. And, the company and most of the developers were not doing anything, and here we go, needed to put like 35-40 million euro on the table, and we could do this development. It was probably the only development we did back that year, and maybe it was one of the very few development that developers did back in 2009. So that was a good moment, yeah.
I'm conscious of time. I've got one last question for our panellists, which I'm going to ask for a one-word answer to. But before I pose that question, do we have any questions from the audience that would like to come forward? Anything that's a burning question?
Just a word
Lady.
of correction. The British people are not the best educated people in the world. If you measure that with the Nobel Prize winners, you're much behind Americans.
I didn't say they were the British. I didn't say they were the best. Sorry, you misunderstood me.
The world's full of brilliant people. Let's put it tactfully like that. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Right. My one word, one sentence request. You're all experts in your fields. You know the markets in your areas. You've got a lot of knowledge. What do you envisage to be the biggest challenge over the next 12 months? Joseph.
This year, 2016, we each 3-4 years we set our, business
One
plans.
sentence.
One sentence. It's continue to grow through development and making sure that our platform is where it needs to be over the next 12 months.
The challenge for me would be to keep up the kind of a growth which we have currently in light of kind of a changing world. So and how can we really expand into, that's the second question.
There's a comma. It's okay, you can carry on. Take a breath with a comma.
That's a British thing. It's okay.
How we can really kind of expand into new geographies in the same way or in the same kind of speed as we've done in the places we are present right now.
Continue the success, but on a bigger scale.
On the bigger scale.
Okay.
Yeah, which would be a challenge.
Okay. So Stuart.
Political leadership in Europe and the UK.
Which very neatly brings me to a close and asks you to please take time to vote if you are so minded. So we have an indication from those present, which you can do online or you can, I think, do on the little sheets. But gentlemen, thank you very much and thank you for joining us in the debate. Thank you. All right. Nice, isn't it?